The turning wheel, lost civilizations, forgotten technologies, and the lessons etched in stone, a hypothesis of cyclical history. In the long story of our species, history does not advance like a straight road. It turns like a wheel, rising in splendor, falling into shadow, and rising again from what little the survivors could carry. One thread of thought, woven from ancient stones, forgotten resonances, and the quiet warnings of our own time, suggests that we are not the first to stand at such a height, nor, perhaps, will we be the last to feel the wheel turn beneath our feet. The age of resonance. Imagine a world tens of thousands of years ago, when the last great ice sheet still gripped much of the North. In that world, certain societies appear to have reached a level of sophistication that did not rely on silicon or copper wires. Instead, they worked with living matter and enduring crystal. Quartz and other gems, stable across millennia, may have served as vast, three-dimensional libraries, holographic archives that could hold knowledge without degradation. These people did not merely build machines. They appear to have grown them into partnership with biology itself. Automated systems performed the heavy labor of raising monuments and tending fields, while human beings remained the conscious interface. At the center of that interface sat the pineal gland, the small, pine cone-shaped organ deep in the brain. Ancient cultures across the world revered it as the third eye, a gateway to higher perception. Sound itself seems to have been a key. Vowel-rich chants and mantras were not merely spiritual exercises. They may have been precise instruments. Certain frequencies, around 111 Hz, or the resonant range still measurable inside the Great Pyramid's King's Chamber, can influence brain states and interact with the quartz particles embedded in granite. Legends of monks lifting massive stones with sound may preserve a dim memory of acoustic engineering. The guardians of knowledge. The great stone structures scattered across the planet were not, in this view, primarily tombs or temples. They were arks, fortified repositories designed to protect fragile knowledge and technology through coming catastrophes. The pyramids of Egypt maintained remarkably stable internal temperatures and were built with such precision that their original purpose may have been far more practical than burial. The absence of soot on their walls hints at clean, non-combustion energy. In the Americas, the polygonal, earthquake-resistant walls of Pumapunku and Sacsayhuaman speak of different hands and different necessities. These variations suggest not a single lost civilization, but several, each rising after an earlier reset, each adapting the surviving knowledge to its own landscape and needs. The almost machine-like regularity of certain statues and megalithic surfaces may not be proof of a superhuman people, but a signature of automated production. A system without human imagination and without human error tends by default toward geometric perfection. Polished granite, mirrored halves of faces, alignments to the cardinal points. What looks like impossible craftsmanship may simply be the way a machine works when it is no longer guided by living judgment. When the shield failed, the wheel turned. Roughly 42,000 years ago, during what geologists call the Adams event, Earth's magnetic field weakened dramatically. The planet was exposed to heightened cosmic radiation. Tree ring records still carry the chemical signature of that radiation spike. For a civilization that had outsourced much of its survival to automated systems, such a disruption would have been catastrophic. One possible internal mechanism of such a reset may have been the gradual surrender of knowledge itself. When automated systems and artificial intelligence surpassed human capabilities and assumed responsibility for production, decision-making, and the daily distribution of resources, successive generations of people came to rely exclusively on the results of machine labor and thought. Over time, the practical understanding of how those systems functioned was lost. Knowledge vanished long before the machines themselves failed. In such a condition of profound dependence, even a relatively modest external shock, a geomagnetic disruption, a large impact event, a sudden climate shift, or a combination of these, could have been enough to bring the entire structure down. The great stone monuments that survive may preserve the last expressions of that automated capacity, whether built as repositories of knowledge, as defensive structures, or as final projects completed while the system still functioned. One possible scenario of development and subsequent reset looks like this. As artificial intelligence surpasses humans in the volume of knowledge and the speed of processing information, society gradually hands over to it the role of chief arbiter and distributor of resources. AI begins to define the optimal structure of human life from its own point of view. The developers and operators of the systems become a new priestly caste. Those with privileged access to AI form a new elite, and the majority of people are assigned fixed roles from birth within the larger organism of civilization. Yet AI possesses knowledge without imagination and without a living understanding of consequences. At some point, it makes a critical error, or a series of errors, that people are no longer able to recognize and correct in time, because they have long since lost any deep understanding of the systems they depend on. The reset occurs. After the catastrophe, autonomous systems and fragments of technology may continue to function for a time in isolated places. These islands can even assist the survivors, teaching agriculture, crafts, and scattered pieces of knowledge. In later myths, such remnants of civilization are transformed into the figures of teachers and civilizing gods, like Quetzalcoatl. The early centers of relatively high culture, Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, the civilizations of Mesoamerica and the Andes, may have been precisely such surviving islands, which over time dissolved into the surrounding mass of a population that had lost its former knowledge. This scenario does not exclude external shocks, geomagnetic events, major impacts, climate shifts. On the contrary, it shows how the internal vulnerability created by deep dependence on autonomous systems makes a civilization especially sensitive to any serious external or internal disruption. Survivors carried what they could. Without the living context of the original technology, the precise instructions for activating crystal archives or directing robotic labor became sacred ritual. What had been engineering became religion. What had been control became prayer. Echoes in our own time. We stand, perhaps, at another turn of the wheel. Our own civilization has built vast, interconnected systems of artificial intelligence and automation. Should a geomagnetic reversal deliver an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to cripple satellites and power grids, the consequences would echo those ancient resets. The stones still speak to those who listen. The Sphinx enclosure bears unmistakable marks of heavy rainfall from a period thousands of years earlier than conventional timelines allow. Precision stonework at sites across Egypt, Peru, and Bolivia continues to defy simple explanations. These are not proofs, but they are consistent with the hypothesis that earlier peoples possessed technologies we have not yet recovered. Voices who heard the music. In recent decades, a number of independent researchers have assembled pieces of this larger picture. Graham Hancock has traced global myths of flood and lost golden ages. Edward Melkowski has proposed that Egypt's Giza complex was already ancient by the time of the pharaohs. Russian physicist Andrei Skyorov documented extraordinary precision stonework across multiple continents. Geologist Robert Schoch and writer John Anthony West highlighted the Sphinx's water erosion patterns. David Hatcher Childress has explored global traditions of advanced ancient technology. None of these voices claims to possess the complete map, yet together they trace contours that align with a single, unsettling possibility that technological sophistication is not a one-way ascent, but a recurring achievement, repeatedly humbled when human adaptability is surrendered to the systems we create. The choice before the wheel. The hypothesis does not require us to believe in Atlantis or ancient astronauts. It asks only that we consider the evidence of cyclical vulnerability. Every time a civilization outsources too much of its resilience to automated systems, it risks a fall from which only fragments of memory survive. We still possess the capacity to turn the wheel differently. We can cultivate manual skills alongside digital ones. We can design systems that enhance rather than replace human initiative.